The sun beat down on Sarah's face, hot and angry like the men who had left her there. Her throat felt like sandpaper, and her swollen belly ached with every step she took. Dust devils danced in the distance, mocking her slow progress. She'd begged them, pleaded with them, but her husband's family, the Reynolds, were as hard and unforgiving as the desert itself. They believed she was bringing shame to their name, carrying children that weren't fully theirs. As far as they were concerned, the desert could have her. Sarah remembered the wagon ride, the jarring bumps, and the cold eyes of her husband's brothers. Her husband, Thomas, wasn't there. He was away on business. She wondered if he knew what they were planning. Did he even care? The thought stung worse than the sun. They had stopped near a dry creek bed, telling her to get out. They tossed her a half-empty canteen and a thin blanket, their faces grim. "This is where you belong," one of them had sneered. "Out here with nothing." Sarah had watched the wagon disappear over the horizon, the sound of the horses' hooves fading into the vast emptiness. Now, days later, she was still walking. She rationed the water, taking tiny sips that barely quenched her thirst. She scanned the horizon for any sign of life, any hope of rescue, but there was only sand and rock and the endless blue sky. She tried to remember the stories her mother used to tell her, stories of strong women who survived against all odds. She clung to the memory of her mother's face, her gentle hands. Those memories were all she had left. Fear gnawed at her, not just for herself, but for the babies growing inside her. Twins. She knew they were twins. She could feel them kicking, 2 tiny lives depending on her strength. She had to survive. She had to find water, find shelter, find a way. But the desert was a cruel mistress, and Sarah was beginning to lose hope. Each step was heavier than the last, each breath more painful. She stumbled, falling to her knees. The sun was a blinding white disk in the sky. This could be the end. This barren land could be her grave. The world swam in and out of focus. Sarah's body was racked with pain. It wasn't just the thirst or the hunger anymore. It was a deeper, more primal pain. The babies were coming. She cried out, a raw, animal sound lost in the vastness of the desert. She tried to stand, to find some semblance of shelter, but her legs wouldn't hold her. She was trapped, alone, giving birth under the unforgiving sun. Hours blurred together. Waves of pain washed over her, each one stronger than the last. She pushed, she strained, she screamed. Tears streamed down her face, mixing with the dust and sweat. She thought of her mother again, of the stories she used to tell. "You are strong, Sarah," she remembered her mother saying. "Stronger than you know." She clung to those words, using them as fuel to keep going. Finally, with a final, desperate push, the first baby arrived. A small, fragile boy, covered in blood and dust. She held him close, whispering words of comfort, her heart overflowing with a love she never knew existed. But there was no time to rest. The pain started again, even stronger this time. The second baby was coming. It was harder this time, her body exhausted and depleted. She pushed and pushed, her vision blurring, her strength fading. She cried out again, a desperate plea for help that would never come. And then, finally, the second baby arrived. Another boy, just as small and fragile as the first. She held them both close, cradling them in her arms. 2 tiny lives, born into a world of hardship and danger. She looked at their faces so innocent and pure. Henry and James. She would call them Henry and James. She would protect them, no matter what, even if it meant giving her own life. But as she held them, exhaustion overwhelmed her. Her body trembled, her vision faded, and she felt herself slipping away. The sun beat down on her, hot and relentless. She closed her eyes, surrendering to the darkness. She had brought them into the world. Now, she could only pray that someone would find them, that someone would save them. She drifted into unconsciousness, the cries of her newborn sons fading into the silence of the desert. The sun climbed higher in the sky, baking the earth. Vultures circled overhead, their shadows dancing ominously on the sand. The cries of the babies, weak but persistent, were the only sounds in the desolate landscape. Chan had been tracking a deer for days. He was a skilled hunter, his senses honed by years of living in harmony with the land. He knew the rhythms of the desert, the whispers of the wind, the secrets hidden beneath the sand. But it wasn't the deer that caught his attention that day. It was the sound, a faint, almost imperceptible cry that tugged at his heart. He followed the sound, his movements swift and silent. He crested a small rise and stopped, his eyes widening in disbelief. There, lying in the sand, was a woman. Her skin was pale, her clothes torn, and she was surrounded by two tiny bundles. Babies. Chan had never seen a white woman before, not this close. He knew of them, of course. The settlers who were pushing westward, taking land that wasn't theirs. He had no reason to trust her, no reason to help her. But the sight of the babies, so vulnerable and helpless, stirred something within him. He approached cautiously, his hand resting on the handle of his knife. The woman didn't move. He knelt beside her, his dark eyes scanning her face. She was barely alive. He gently touched her forehead. It was burning with fever. He looked at the babies. They were crying, their tiny faces red and wrinkled. They needed food, they needed water, they needed help. He knew he couldn't leave them there to die. Chan made a decision. He couldn't save the world, but he could save these 3 lives. He carefully gathered the babies in his arms, cradling them against his chest. Then he lifted the woman, his strong arms supporting her weight. He started walking, heading towards the mountains in the distance. He knew of a spring, a hidden oasis where he could find water and shelter. It was a long journey, and the woman was heavy. But he didn't stop. He wouldn't stop. He had made a promise, a silent vow, to protect these 3 lives. He would lead them to safety, even if it meant risking his own. The desert would not claim them today. The journey to the oasis was arduous. Chan moved with a steady pace, his body accustomed to the harsh terrain. Sarah remained unconscious, her fever raging. The babies cried intermittently, their small bodies wriggling in his arms. He stopped periodically to offer them small sips of water from his water skin, carefully dripping it onto their parched lips. He thought of his own family, of his mother and sisters. They would know what to do for the babies. He hoped he could reach the oasis in time. He also couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the desert, Chan spotted a small cave hidden behind a cluster of rocks. It wasn't much, but it offered some protection from the elements. He carefully laid Sarah down inside the cave, then gathered some dry brush to build a small fire. The fire crackled and popped, casting a warm glow on the cave walls. Chan sat beside Sarah, watching her closely. He knew little of white people's medicine, but he knew some herbs that could help with fever. He gathered some leaves from a nearby plant and crushed them between his fingers, then mixed them with water to create a poultice. He gently applied the poultice to Sarah's forehead, hoping it would bring her some relief. The babies were restless, their cries growing louder. Chan knew they needed food. He had seen a rabbit earlier in the day, and he wished he had hunted it. He had to find a way to feed them. He remembered his mother telling him of ways to make a nourishing broth from plants. He would have to try. He left the cave, his knife in hand, and ventured out into the darkness. The desert was alive with sounds, the hooting of owls, the rustling of small animals, the distant howl of a coyote. He moved cautiously, his senses alert. He found some edible plants and roots, carefully selecting the ones he knew were safe. He returned to the cave and started a small fire to boil the plants. The aroma filled the air, a strange mixture of herbs and smoke. He strained the broth through a piece of cloth, then carefully fed it to the babies, using a small piece of animal skin as a makeshift spoon. The babies seemed to calm down, their cries subsiding. Chan watched them, his heart filled with a mixture of hope and concern. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew he would do everything in his power to protect them. He was no longer just a hunter, a warrior. He was a protector, a guardian, and he would not fail them. Sarah woke with a gasp, her body weak and trembling. She was lying on a bed of soft furs, the air filled with the scent of smoke and herbs. She looked around, her eyes wide with confusion. Where was she? She saw Chan sitting by the fire, his face etched with concern. He saw she was awake and offered her water. You are safe, he said, his voice gentle. You have been very sick. Sarah drank the water gratefully, feeling its coolness soothe her parched throat. My babies, she whispered. Where are my babies? Chan smiled and gestured to two small bundles lying beside her. Henry and James. They were sleeping peacefully, their tiny faces relaxed. Relief washed over Sarah. They were alive. They were safe. She looked at Chan, her eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you, she said. Thank you for saving us. We must go, Chan said. It is not safe to stay here. I will take you to my village. Sarah didn't know what to expect, but she trusted Chan. He had saved her life and the lives of her babies. She would follow him anywhere. The journey to the Sioux village was long and perilous. Chan built a travois, a platform pulled by a horse, to carry Sarah and the babies. They traveled through canyons and across plains, always on the lookout for danger. One day, they were ambushed by a group of bandits. The bandits were rough and desperate men, looking for anything they could steal. Chan fought bravely, protecting Sarah and the babies with his life. Sarah, despite her weakness, grabbed a rock and threw it at one of the bandits, hitting him square in the face. The bandits were surprised by their resistance, and after a fierce struggle, they retreated. Chan and Sarah were bruised and battered, but they were alive. As they continued their journey, Sarah began to learn about Chan's people, the Sioux. She learned about their customs, their beliefs, and their way of life. She saw their deep connection to the land, their respect for nature, and their strong sense of community. She realized that these people, who she had once viewed as savages, were actually kind and compassionate. They had welcomed her, a stranger, into their world, and they had treated her with respect and kindness. She began to feel a sense of belonging, a sense of hope that she had never felt before. Maybe, just maybe, she had found a new home. The Sioux village was nestled in a valley, surrounded by towering cliffs and a clear, rushing river. Teepees dotted the landscape, smoke curling lazily from their tops. Children played in the open fields, their laughter echoing through the valley. It was a world away from the harshness of the desert, a place of peace and tranquility. Sarah was welcomed by the women of the village. They were curious about her strange clothes and pale skin, but they were also kind and compassionate. They helped her settle into a teepee, providing her with food and blankets. They showed her how to care for her babies, sharing their knowledge of herbal remedies and traditional birthing practices. One of the women, a wise elder named Grandmother Willow, took a special interest in Sarah. Grandmother Willow had seen many things in her long life, and she recognized the pain and sadness in Sarah's eyes. She knew that Sarah had suffered a great loss, and she wanted to help her heal. Grandmother Willow taught Sarah about the Sioux culture, about their respect for the earth, their reverence for their ancestors, and their belief in the interconnectedness of all things. She told Sarah stories of brave warriors, wise leaders, and strong women who had shaped the history of the Sioux people. Sarah learned about the importance of community, about how everyone in the village worked together to support each other. She saw how the children were raised by the entire village, how the elders were respected and cared for, and how everyone had a role to play in the well-being of the community. She learned about their spiritual beliefs, about their connection to the Great Spirit, and about their ceremonies and rituals. She learned about their dances, their songs, and their art. She began to understand their way of life, their values, and their beliefs. Sarah also started to learn the Sioux language. It was a difficult language, with sounds and pronunciations that were unfamiliar to her, but she was determined to learn. She wanted to be able to communicate with the people of the village, to understand their stories, and to share her own. As she learned more about the Sioux people, Sarah began to question her own beliefs and values. She had always believed that white people were superior, that they were more civilized and more intelligent than other races. But now, she was starting to see things differently. She realized that the Sioux people had a wisdom and a knowledge that she had never encountered before. They lived in harmony with nature, they respected each other, and they had a strong sense of community. Maybe she thought they were the civilized ones. As Henry and James grew, Sarah became increasingly aware of their differences. Their skin was lighter than the other children in the village, their hair a sandy brown instead of black. They were clearly different, and Sarah knew that this difference would not go unnoticed by the outside world. She worried about their future. What kind of life would they have? Would they be accepted by either the white or the Sioux communities? Would they be caught between two worlds, never truly belonging to either one? The Sioux people were accepting of Henry and James, treating them as their own. But Sarah knew that not everyone would be so kind. She had heard stories of the prejudice and hatred that white people held for Native Americans, and she feared that her sons would be subjected to the same kind of discrimination. She also worried about the influence of her own culture. She wanted her sons to learn about their heritage, about the stories and traditions of her people. But she also wanted them to embrace the Sioux culture, to learn their language, and to respect their way of life. She talked to Grandmother Willow about her concerns. Grandmother Willow listened patiently, her eyes filled with wisdom. "Your sons are a gift," she said. "They are a bridge between two worlds. They have the blood of both the white people and the Sioux people in their veins. They can learn from both cultures, and they can help to build a better future for all." Grandmother Willow told Sarah that it was important to teach her sons about their heritage, but it was also important to teach them about respect and understanding. She told her to teach them to be proud of who they were, to embrace their differences, and to never let anyone tell them that they were not good enough. Sarah took Grandmother Willow's words to heart. She began to teach her sons about both cultures, telling them stories of her own childhood and teaching them about the Sioux traditions. She taught them about respect, about kindness, and about the importance of standing up for what is right. She also began to learn more about the challenges that mixed-race children faced in the world. She learned about the prejudice and discrimination that they often encountered, and she realized that she needed to prepare her sons for these challenges. She knew that she couldn't protect them from everything, but she could give them the tools they needed to navigate a world that was often unfair and unkind. She would teach them to be strong, to be resilient, and to be proud of who they were, no matter what. Despite the initial welcome, Sarah faced challenges as she tried to integrate into the Sioux community. She didn't know their customs, their language, or their ways of doing things. She often felt clumsy and out of place, like she was always making mistakes. Some of the villagers were wary of her. They had seen what the white people had done to their land, to their people. They didn't trust her, and they didn't want her in their village. They whispered behind her back, calling her names and questioning her motives. Sarah felt isolated and alone. She missed her old life, her family, her friends. She wondered if she had made the right decision, if she should have tried to find her way back to the white world. But then she would look at Henry and James, at their innocent faces and their trusting eyes, and she knew that she couldn't give up. She had to stay strong for them. She had to learn to adapt, to fit in, to become a part of this community. She sought guidance from Grandmother Willow, who had always been kind and supportive. Grandmother Willow told her that it was natural to feel out of place, that it took time to learn a new culture. She encouraged Sarah to be patient, to be persistent, and to never give up on herself. Sarah started to work harder, to learn the Sioux language, to participate in their ceremonies, and to help with the daily tasks of the village. She learned how to gather herbs, how to make clothing, and how to prepare food. She showed the villagers that she was willing to learn, that she was willing to work hard, and that she was truly committed to becoming a part of their community. Slowly but surely, the villagers began to accept her. They saw her dedication, her kindness, and her willingness to learn. They saw that she was a good mother, that she loved her sons, and that she was trying her best to fit in. They started to invite her to their gatherings, to share their meals with her, and to teach her their skills. They told her stories of their ancestors, of their struggles, and of their triumphs. They shared their laughter, their tears, and their hopes for the future. Sarah found herself forming deep bonds with the women of the village. They became her friends, her confidants, and her support system. They helped her to raise her sons, to navigate the challenges of motherhood, and to find joy in her new life. She realized that she had found a new family, a new community, and a new home. She was finally starting to feel like she belonged. As Sarah settled into life in the Sioux village, her friendship with Chan deepened. They had started as strangers brought together by fate. Now, they were becoming something more. Chan admired Sarah's strength and resilience. He had seen her face death in the desert, give birth to her sons alone, and adapt to a completely new culture. He respected her courage and her determination to provide a good life for her children. Sarah, in turn, admired Chan's kindness and compassion. He had risked his own life to save her and her babies, and he had welcomed her into his community without hesitation. She respected his wisdom, his skill as a warrior, and his deep connection to the land. They spent hours talking, sharing stories of their pasts, their hopes for the future, and their thoughts on the world around them. Chan told Sarah about his family, about his training as a warrior, and about his dreams for the Sioux people. Sarah told Chan about her life back east, about her family, about her dreams of owning a small farm. They learned from each other, gaining new perspectives and understanding. Chan helped Sarah to understand the Sioux culture, to appreciate their values, and to respect their way of life. Sarah helped Chan to understand the white world, to see its complexities, and to recognize its flaws. They often worked together, helping each other with their daily tasks. Chan taught Sarah how to hunt, how to track animals, and how to protect herself in the wilderness. Sarah taught Chan how to read, how to write, and how to do arithmetic. They shared a quiet understanding, a deep respect, and a growing affection. They knew that their friendship was something special, something rare and precious. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Chan told Sarah about a vision he had had. He had seen her standing tall and strong, surrounded by her sons, leading the Sioux people into a new era of peace and prosperity. He believed that she was destined to play an important role in the future of his people. Sarah was moved by Chan's words. She didn't know if she was worthy of such a vision, but she was determined to do her best to live up to his expectations. She knew that she had found a new purpose in life, a new reason to keep fighting, a new reason to keep hoping. She would do everything in her power to help the Sioux people, to protect her sons, and to build a better future for all. Their bond deepened into something unbreakable. They were kindred spirits who were meant to meet. Despite her growing acceptance in the Sioux village, Sarah still carried the weight of her past. The betrayal by her husband's family, the abandonment in the desert, the loneliness of childbirth. These were wounds that ran deep. She tried to bury them, to focus on the present, but they would often resurface in her dreams, haunting her with their pain. One day, Grandmother Willow found Sarah sitting by the river, staring blankly at the water. She sat down beside her, her eyes filled with concern. "You are troubled," she said. "I see the pain in your heart." Sarah hesitated, unsure if she could open up about her past. But she trusted Grandmother Willow, and she knew that she needed to talk. She told her everything, about her marriage, about her husband's family, and about the events that had led to her abandonment in the desert. As she spoke, tears streamed down her face. She relived the pain, the anger, and the humiliation of her past. Grandmother Willow listened patiently, offering words of comfort and support. When Sarah was finished, Grandmother Willow took her hand. "You have suffered a great injustice," she said, "but you cannot let the pain of the past control your future. You must forgive those who have wronged you, not for their sake, but for your own." Grandmother Willow explained that holding onto anger and resentment was like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. She said that forgiveness was the only way to heal, to move on, and to find peace. Sarah didn't know if she could forgive her husband's family. She didn't know if she could ever forget what they had done to her. But she knew that Grandmother Willow was right. She couldn't let the past define her. She had to find a way to let go of the pain, to release the anger, and to embrace the future. Grandmother Willow led Sarah to a sacred place in the forest, a place where the Sioux people went to connect with the Great Spirit. She taught Sarah a traditional ceremony, a ritual of forgiveness and healing. Sarah participated in the ceremony, offering prayers of forgiveness and letting go of her pain. She cried, she screamed, and she released all of the pent-up emotions that she had been holding onto for so long. As she finished the ceremony, Sarah felt a sense of peace that she had never felt before. She knew that she would never forget the past, but she also knew that she was no longer defined by it. She was free to move on, to create a new life, and to find happiness. She started to heal. She returned to the village with a lighter heart, a clearer mind, and a renewed sense of purpose. She was ready to embrace her new life with the Sioux people, to raise her sons, and to build a better future for all. The path to healing was long, but she had taken the first step. Years passed. Henry and James grew into strong, healthy boys, fluent in both English and the Sioux language. They were skilled hunters, brave warriors, and kind and compassionate young men. Sarah watched them with pride, knowing that she had raised them well. She had become an integral part of the Sioux community, respected for her wisdom, her strength, and her dedication. She had learned their customs, their language, and their ways of doing things. She was no longer a stranger, an outsider. She was one of them. One day, a group of white settlers arrived at the edge of the Sioux territory. They were looking for land, for resources, and for a new place to call home. They approached the Sioux village, demanding that they give up their land and move west. The Sioux people refused. They had lived on this land for generations, and they were not willing to give it up without a fight. Tensions rose, and it seemed like war was inevitable. Sarah found herself caught between two worlds. She understood the settlers' desire for a better life, but she also knew that they were wrong to take land that wasn't theirs. She knew that she had to do something to prevent a war. She approached the leader of the settlers, a stern-faced man named Mr. Johnson. She told him her story, about her abandonment in the desert, about her rescue by Chon, and about her life with the Sioux people. She told him about their kindness, their compassion, and their deep connection to the land. She pleaded with him to reconsider his demands, to find a way to coexist peacefully with the Sioux people. She told him that there was enough land for everyone, that they didn't have to fight. Mr. Johnson listened to Sarah's story, his face softening as she spoke. He had heard stories about the Sioux people, about their savagery and their violence. But he saw that Sarah was different, that she had found peace and happiness among them. He agreed to meet with the leaders of the Sioux tribe to discuss a peaceful resolution to the conflict. Sarah acted as a translator, helping both sides to understand each other's perspectives. After days of negotiations, they reached an agreement. The settlers would be allowed to settle on a small portion of the Sioux territory, but they would respect the Sioux people's right to live on their land, to hunt on their land, and to practice their traditions. They would also agree to work together to protect the land from outsiders. Sarah had helped to avert a war, to protect her new home, and to build a bridge between two worlds. She knew that there would still be challenges ahead, but she was confident that they could overcome them, together. She had made her decision. She would stay with the Sioux people, to raise her sons, to protect her community, and to build a better future for all. This was her home now. This was where she belonged. The peace was fragile. Not all the settlers were happy with the agreement. Some still harbored resentment towards the Sioux people, viewing them as savages who were standing in the way of progress. They plotted in secret, waiting for an opportunity to strike. One cold winter night, a group of these rogue settlers attacked the Sioux village. They came armed with guns and torches, intent on driving the Sioux people off their land once and for all. The Sioux warriors fought bravely, defending their homes and their families. But they were outnumbered and outgunned. It seemed like they were about to be overwhelmed. Sarah, who had learned to fight alongside the Sioux warriors, grabbed a rifle and joined the battle. She fought with a ferocity that surprised even herself. She was no longer the timid woman who had been abandoned in the desert. She was a mother, a warrior, and a protector. She saw one of the settlers aiming his rifle at Henry. Without hesitation, she threw herself in front of her son, taking the bullet in her shoulder. She cried out in pain, but she didn't falter. She grabbed her own rifle and shot the settler dead. Henry and James, witnessing their mother's bravery, fought with renewed vigor. They were fierce and fearless, protecting their mother and their community. Chan, seeing Sarah wounded, rushed to her side. He helped her to safety, then rejoined the battle, fighting with the strength of a bear. He rallied the Sioux warriors, inspiring them to fight harder. The battle raged through the night. The Sioux people, fueled by their love for their land and their families, fought with courage and determination. Slowly but surely, they began to turn the tide. As dawn approached, the settlers realized that they were defeated. They retreated, leaving behind their dead and wounded. The Sioux village was saved. Sarah, despite her wound, had played a crucial role in the victory. She had shown the Sioux people that she was willing to fight for them, to protect them, and to defend their way of life. She had proven that she was truly one of them. She had also shown her sons the importance of courage, of loyalty, and of standing up for what is right. They had learned from her example, and they were ready to follow in her footsteps. In the days that followed, the Sioux people celebrated their victory. They honored their fallen warriors, and they thanked Sarah for her bravery. They knew that they had survived because of her strength, her courage, and her unwavering loyalty. She was more than just a mother, more than just a friend. She was a hero. The bond with her sons and community was unbreakable. Sarah lived a long and full life among the Sioux people. Her shoulder never fully healed, a constant reminder of the battle she had fought. But it was also a symbol of her strength, her courage, and her unwavering commitment to her chosen family. She watched as her sons grew into men, marrying Sioux women and starting families of their own. They supported each other through thick and thin, always there for each other when they needed it most. Grandmother Willow lived to a ripe old age, passing on her wisdom and knowledge to Sarah and the other women of the village. She taught them about the power of healing, the importance of forgiveness, and the strength of community. Sarah never forgot her past. She never forgot the betrayal she had experienced, the abandonment she had endured, and the pain she had suffered. But she didn't let the past define her. She used it as a lesson, as a reminder of how far she had come and how much she had overcome. She had found peace in her new life, surrounded by the love and support of her chosen family. She had found belonging in a place she never expected to find it. She had found hope in the midst of despair. She often sat by the river, watching the water flow by, reflecting on her journey. She had come to the Sioux village as a broken woman, lost and alone. She had found healing, strength, and purpose. She had found a new home, a new family, and a new life. As she grew older, Sarah became a legend among the Sioux people. They told stories of her bravery, her wisdom, and her kindness. They revered her as a hero, a protector, and a symbol of hope. When she finally passed away, she was mourned by the entire community. They honored her with a traditional Sioux ceremony, celebrating her life and her legacy. They knew that she would never be forgotten. Sarah Reynolds, the woman who had been abandoned in the desert to die, had found peace, love, and belonging among the Sioux people. She had proven that even in the darkest of times, hope can still prevail. She had shown that even the deepest wounds can be healed. And she had taught everyone that the true meaning of family lies not in blood, but in love, loyalty, and respect. Her story was whispered from generation to generation, a testament to the power of the human spirit and the enduring strength of the human heart.